Hello everyone, today is a good day. Brett Kavanaugh has been confirmed. So we are going to be moving forward with him on the Supreme Court. That is very exciting. Many people across the nation are very pleased. They are happy that false allegations are not prevailing. They are happy that the idea of innocent until proven guilty has been victorious. However, there are also many people who see this as evidence of their worst fears. The fears that rape culture really exists. The fears that even at such high levels in the government, it's okay to just grope whoever you want or do whatever you want sexually. And it signifies to some people that this is just rape culture and this is a horrible thing. So what are we going to do about this? Well, as a Christian, I'd say, for one, pray that people's eyes would be opened and that we would be able to see, and maybe pray for an age of reason to come back into this world and society. But also, when we are having conversations with people, especially if you have an actual relationship with somebody who you know who is really destroyed by this, and they make some comment, I want to give us all some tools, some words to describe the logical fallacies that people are holding on to that are leading them to these false conclusions. And I just want to encourage people that my goal in this anyway is not for us to just run around and be like, ha, you idiot, you're so stupid. Because that's not actually helpful to help unify the nation or to help people begin a journey of self-awareness and to begin a journey of logic. But if we come at this like, hey, you know what, more an empathetic, we've all been fooled, we've all been confused before, like this is a common thing that happens, a common thing that's used, a common thing that people fall for, and there's actually a word to describe exactly the leap in logic that just happened, and it explains why it's not accurate, and then you kind of give a name to it and just say it in a more loving way. I believe that can actually be more helpful. So I just want to encourage you, if you do actually use any of this in like a real conversation, to definitely make sure you're coming from a more loving place and a place of humility versus one of arrogance and just trying to, put it to someone. A lot of these fallacies that I have noticed came directly from people on the Texas Christian University campus that spoke for rape culture existing in Steven Crowder's video on this topic in his Change Your Mind segment. Okay, so I'm going to get to it. The first logical fallacy is a very common one with social justice warriors, and that's the ad hominem. So the idea of that is, rather than actually arguing against the point that someone made, you just attack them personally. So what happened in the first girl that Steven Crowder talked to was particularly angry. We'll just say that. And when she'd get stuck, it would turn into, why are you here? Do you know you're a meme? Do you know people hate you? Why? What are you doing? You're just, Republicans are just jerks. You just don't care about people who are raped. You just don't care. You are horrible. So whatever you have to say couldn't be true, couldn't be accurate because you're awful. And that's not an argument. It doesn't stand against him pointing out that conviction rates for armed robbery are similar to those of rape. That's an actual fact and statistic. The second logical fallacy is the appeal to ignorance. And so what this is saying is, because you cannot prove or totally disprove this, that it must be either true or false. So, for instance, what they're saying is, well, if Brett Kavanaugh can't totally prove his innocence beyond any kind of doubt, then he must be guilty. And I'll be honest, people could maybe say, for people who are for Brett Kavanaugh, well, you can't prove his... You're saying that if Ford can't prove his guilt, then he must be innocent. But that's actually not what people are saying. What people are saying is the whole country was founded on the premise of innocent until proven guilty. And so that has already been set up. If you want to argue against that premise, you are arguing against America itself. So this is already an agreed upon start of the conversation. So the burden of proof was on her. The thing is having two comments about boofing and a devil's triangle that he says is flatulence and a drinking game is just not substantial proof to say that he is a rapist. And what she's accusing him of is not actually even rape. Perhaps she's trying to say it's attempted rape or it's a sexual assault, but it's still not the same thing as rape. So that's not even accurate either. But I digress. We will move on to the third logical fallacy, and that is the false dilemma. And what goes on with the false dilemma is when somebody basically boils things down to two options when there's really a lot more options than that. For instance, this whole conversation has been framed like you either listen to the accuser and assume she is a victim regardless of evidence, or you condone rape. Like, is there really nothing in between that? If you come from it at that mentality, you're going to say, well, I don't want to encourage rape. I don't want to be this is also virtue signaling, where it's like, I'm not a victim blamer. Like, I don't blame victims. You do, and it's just trying to look virtuous, but you're not actually helping anybody. You're not actually doing anything. So some other ones that are kind of related, but I think they're slightly different. If you stand for due process, you stand against victims. So you can't both care about victims and stand for due process. Like, those can't coexist, according to this false dilemma logical fallacy. And then actually I'm going to add, just as far as the rape culture conversation, I believe that they also create this false dilemma of you can either care about the conduct of a woman in the conversation of discerning whether she gave consent or not. You can either care about that, or you have to just totally disregard it, and it's totally irrelevant. So it's not like we're going to look at all the factors involved and then make the assessment. It's if you care at all whether she had anything to drink, if you care at all what she had said earlier, if you care at all about her prior history, then you're just victim blaming. And apparently a girl who has been promiscuous in the past can't be raped, according to you. That's a false dilemma. That does not have to be the way somebody thinks. People don't have to think so black and white. People can have a nuanced approach to things. The next one is the PC argument, or it actually used to be called the name-calling fallacy. And when I say PC, I'm meaning political correctness. So it's if you question a woman who is making an allegation, you are sexist. You are misogynist. You are this. You are that. And it's all that is kind of an ad hominem, where you're just attacking the character of the person, and it's just distracting from the conversation, because that's really not relevant. If somebody brings up a point and then you just say, well, you're sexist, so I don't need to actually address what you said, you're just sexist. The next logical fallacy is the hasty generalization. And it sounds exactly like it sounds. It's just jumping to conclusions. And I really actually feel very sympathetic to a lot of the people who are coming to these conclusions, because I just think it's really understandable when people are experiencing something where they say, well, you know what? I'm not totally sure about rape culture, but I know at least 10 people who say they've been sexually assaulted. I know a lot of people personally. That will always impact your worldview. And so where does a hasty generalization come in? Well, one, that's too small of a sample size, but But even so, I think the reality is, even if you took the whole campus of Texas Christian University, there would be a lot of women who said they were sexually assaulted. The problem really comes in with how you define sexual assault and how women are responding to men's advances, how it's been framed to them, how they've been encouraged to respond. That is making a big difference. I'm going to link a video to the Factual Feminists talking about the statistic about 1 in 4 women were sexually assaulted on college campuses. And she really breaks it down to explain that that stat comes from a very wide and open description of what sexual assault is, and the people who were responding it was probably not very representative of the population as a whole. It was representative of people who already were interested in and concerned about sexual assault. I believe the same kind of dynamic is happening here at this campus in this conversation about rape culture. This is my hypothesis, is that women are experiencing what they believe to be sexual assault because of the conditioning that they've received. So rather than thinking, if I'm making out with a guy and he goes for second base, I just need to move his hand and say, I don't want that. They think, I've been sexually assaulted, I am traumatized. What used to be not necessarily this huge deal, whereas sexual liberation world, it was, okay, I'm empowered to really take control of the sexual situation. Women are being taught that they're just victims of the patriarchy. And I really want to stand against this kind of mentality, because I think this is very sad that there are so many women who are taking on the emotional burden of feeling like a sexual assault victim when that is not how they need to frame it. And I'm not saying nobody has been, but I'm saying I so very highly suspect that this is the situation, because I'll link below the guidelines that they talk about as far as consent. They basically boil it down to, you, a man or a woman, I guess, need to receive verbal confirmation before any kind of activity, and it can be retracted. So before you move on to something that is sort of a different level of sexual experience, you need further verbal consent, and there cannot be any kind of impairment of judgment, or it is sexual assault. And I think sometimes people will read something like that and say, oh, that sounds good. Like, yeah, you shouldn't be impaired. Your judgment shouldn't be impaired. But it's like, I mean, I'm a Christian. I really am not encouraging hookup culture. I'm really not encouraging party culture. But I'm also a libertarian, and I believe God gives us freedom to make our own choices. So to act as if, I mean, that's pretty much making it illegal for a man to do anything sexually with a party girl. And to pretend that doesn't exist is just really naive, and it's really very authoritarian to try to go that direction. It makes me think so much of the book 1984, where the government, the state, had pretty much taken all passion out of sex and said it was just a duty to the party. And that's the kind of stuff that can happen when you have this sort of mentality of, you need to sign a legal contract before you do anything. It's just a very strange thing, and I think it's an incredibly unfair and unreasonable approach to this. And I believe there are other answers. This is not a false dilemma of, you either say consent doesn't matter at all, or you have to have this incredibly narrow and purist view of what can constitute consent. But then I'd encourage people, and I made a video about this that we'll be posting in a couple days, about women who, if you don't want something to happen, don't play victim and be proactive in stopping what's going on, whether you think you should have to or not. It doesn't matter. I'd rather you not experience something that you are perceiving as sexual assault. Poor reasoning to not differentiate situations of blurred lines versus forcible sexual misconduct. The next logical fallacy is emotional reasoning. And this one I heard from the guys, and I appreciate that the men are, whatever, trying to look out for women. But one of the guys was saying, okay, I mean, I just see all these women who are just very upset. They're upset about you coming here, Steven Crowder, with a sign saying rape culture is a myth, and they're crying. So you shouldn't be here. And obviously something is going on. Obviously this is real, or these women would not be crying. They would not be upset. Something is wrong with this situation. That's an emotional appeal, and it's using emotions as evidence. That's also a hasty generalization of this must be the conclusion. But there are other factors. Perhaps it's because women have been in college campuses indoctrinated to think that they are incredibly oppressed. Mental captivity is a real thing. Like, I have been somebody who has felt very trapped mentally and then has had to open my eyes, and it has taken it's been a very long process to get out of a victim mentality. And so when you're stuck in that, you can have real emotions. You can be genuinely upset. You can feel like somebody has violated you. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have. And it's a sadness. It's a sadness for the person who's feeling it, because they really are feeling it. And it's sad for the people who are accused, and they can't really do anything to prevent offending somebody who is easily offended. And so it's like, should Steven Crowder just say, you know what, I'm not going to use my freedom of speech. I'm not going to speak out against this because some people may be uncomfortable? No. I mean, that goes against all that is America with freedom of speech, and this is critical so these lies do not continue to be perpetuated, causing real problems, real people almost didn't get on the Supreme Court because of this kind of mentality that's full of a bunch of logical fallacies and lies. There are students, male students, who have literally lost their scholarships, got kicked out of college, screwed up their career plans because of these logical fallacies. So I get that, women will get emotional when they've been indoctrinated to think that they are just incredibly fragile. Again, the factual feminist talks about this all the time, calls them fainting couch feminists. But I mean, there are real world consequences of this, and this is why it needs to be spoken out against. The last logical fallacy is the non sequitur. What that means is that the second part doesn't necessarily follow the first part of the conversation. So a prime example of this would be if you haven't been raped, you can't have an opinion of rape culture. So I do want to clarify that sometimes this can be a relevant thing to say, but it depends on the situation. And in the situation where this was used, it was not relevant because Steven Crowder, who has not been raped, was not trying to say anything that needed him to be raped to be able to explain it. Those are 7 logical fallacies that I noticed in the video with Steven Crowder talking to college students at Texas Christian University. I'm sure there were more. Feel free to leave comments with other specific names of logical fallacies or just ideas and beliefs that you've noticed. I wrote a blog post over on Minds as well about this, where I really identified a lot of different beliefs that I've noticed from that video and from other sources. So if you like this kind of stuff, then like this video, please. Go ahead, leave a comment. I love having conversations with you guys, and share it with your friends, because people need to stop being deceived. I call myself Liberating Truth because I believe the truth does set you free. Let's find freedom from feminism together. Have a good day, guys. Bye!